Helps if I don't walk into the bookcase. Hi guys, welcome back to Careyberry. So today I am thinking of kind of going over some of my favourite books of this year. Kind of, because I read a lot during the summer. I was staying at my aunt's house during lockdown and I was just reading so much, but because I wasn't at home I couldn't get as many books, like physical books, so I took my Kindle with me and I was reading a lot on Kindle. So I've kind of thought of going over some of my favourite kind of Kindle books that I then loved so much that I had to buy physical copies. There's only one book in this lot that I don't actually have yet and I'm waiting for. But yeah, I'm quite excited about this because I just really loved these books. Okay, so the first one of these is the only one that I haven't technically bought, is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. So this book, I read it on Kindle, like, I can't even remember when. I read these all around the same time. Like I had like a couple of months where I just had such good reading. Like the books I was reading were just like so good. But I read this and it was just so beautiful and so sad. I put a full review on my blog and I will link that in the description. But yeah, I just loved this book. I thought it was just beautiful, like the way Murakami writes is just amazing. But yeah, it was the first work that I've read of his, and yeah, I didn't technically buy this because over the summer my uncle also passed away very sadly, and he was a Murakami fan, so when my dad was clearing out his house he gave me this copy of my uncle's book because he was a Murakami fan and I don't actually have it because obviously I was reading it on the Kindle, so that was really lovely. So obviously this has quite a lot of meaning to it now. But yeah, it's just such a good book. Essentially the plot of this one is that there's this guy kind of reminiscing. He hears the Beatles song Norwegian Wood and he's kind of instantly transported back to his first love, who was the girlfriend of his best friend, and he just thinks back to when they were younger, when he was in like uni and stuff like that, and it's a really interesting book. It's very slow. And like there's not a ton of plot to it, but it's really fascinating, like the way it deals with mental health, and obviously other themes throughout the book that I won't mention because it's kind of spoilery, but like you can kind of get a list of the other trigger warnings in the book. But it's just such a beautiful book. Like I can't recommend it enough. The way that Murakami like describes scenery is so immersive. I just love it so much. But yeah, this is an amazing book. The next book I got, this is kind of turning into a bit of a haul because two of these books I've got recently, but this one I saw in the my local independent shop the other day, so I had to get it because I just loved the ebook so much, and I am trying to participate in NaNoWriMo next month and it's going to be exciting, but I'm going to try and read books that are like the book that I want to write during it to kind of inspire me and motivate me. The next book is 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. So I got this on Kindle over the summer again and I just loved it. Like I read Circe and The Song of Achilles last year and I loved them, and I'm a sucker for Greek mythology, I really am, it can't be helped. So this book is all about the the Trojan War, but from the different perspectives of the women. We only really hear about the men in the Trojan War, and Natalie Haynes tries to kind of put the women in the centre. So it deals with like Penelope and her thoughts while Odysseus is away, and loads of other Greek women, some of which I'd never even heard of, but I just loved it so much because it was the way she was writing them, and like, oh, so good, and the way they kind of discourse with the poets is really interesting and something that I want to incorporate in my own work. So I was just absolutely loving this, and I think it's just really beautiful because each woman has her own distinctive voice, which I really liked. I've also done a review of this one on my blog, which I will link as well. In fact, yeah, I've actually reviewed basically all of them on my blog. So yeah, I will include all of the links below. But yeah, I just cannot recommend this enough if you like Greek mythology. It's just so good, and I love feminist retellings of Greek mythology, so if you know of any others, please leave them in the comments because your girl's always looking for a recommendation. The next two have been talked about pretty much everywhere. Like if you're on BookTube, you've probably heard of both of these. If you're on Bookstagram, you definitely will have. And they are Daisy Jones and the Six and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, both by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'll talk about them kind of separately, but yeah, both of these. So I read Daisy Jones and the Six first. It was my first like exploration into Taylor Jenkins Reid's work, and I just loved it. I thought that she kind of painted this picture so well of the band that I genuinely kept forgetting that they weren't a real band, because you really feel like they are. And I thought that was really impressive because if you look, it's written in like a transcript kind of style where they just like, it's like an interview you're reading. It's like you're reading an interview, but it's so well done. I loved all of the characters for different reasons, and I just thought that it was so good. So if you don't know, Daisy Jones and the Six is about a band called, well, a band called the Six and Daisy Jones, who are like in the 70s. Yeah, they're set in the 70s in LA. And it's just insane, like it's so good, it's so vibrant, it really makes you feel as if you are in the 70s. And essentially it's kind of like Fleetwood Mac inspired, and it's just so good. But so throughout the course of the book, you're trying to find out why they split up, because on the blurb it says their albums were on every turntable, they sold out arenas from coast to coast, their sound defined an era, and then on the 12th of July 1979 they split. Nobody ever knew why until now. So throughout the whole book you're kind of witnessing their rise and then their fall and trying to work out where it all went wrong, which is incredible. But I loved this so much, and around the same time I was watching Rocket Man, I just watched Bohemian Rhapsody, and yesterday as well, and I just loved it so much. It was like this immersion into kind of 70s, 80s, even 60s like music culture, so it kind of inspired me to want to write my own kind of rock inspired story, which I still want to do, and I've written quite a bit for it, but that's kind of on the back burner at the moment because I want to do my Persephone inspired one for NaNoWriMo, so it will come one day. But yeah, okay, so on to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So I read this one after Daisy Jones and the Six, and from what I've heard a lot of people say, they didn't like Daisy Jones as much as they liked Evelyn Hugo, And honestly, I think that part of that is down to not reading them in the right order. And that sounds weird because you should be able to read books that aren't in a series in any order. But personally, I think that reading Daisy Jones and then Evelyn Hugo is a better way to go, because Evelyn Hugo did come after Daisy Jones, that's why it's got the book sticker on it. But I think that if you read Evelyn Hugo first, you have a lot higher expectations, because they are very different, even though they're quite similar in some ways. So throughout Evelyn Hugo, it's also told like an interview, but in a very different way, because you're not so... Let me explain. So Evelyn Hugo is about Evelyn Hugo and her 7 husbands. But there's this girl, Monique, and she's a journalist, and she's like not very well known. She's like really like a small journalist. But for some reason, Evelyn Hugo, one of the most famous women in the world, says that she only wants her to interview her for her story. And this is something that everyone's been clamouring over for, like they really want it, and she's giving it to Monique and we have no idea why. So throughout the book you're learning more about Evelyn and her life and her 7 husbands, while trying to figure out why the hell she wants Monique to write it. It's an incredibly moving book, and it got me like sobbing. And when I say sobbing, I mean like heaving because I can't breathe, like snot, tears. It was a mess. Not the places you would expect in this book. It was another phrase that really got to me because of things that are going on in my own life. But a very, very good book. And I think partly the problem with reading Daisy Jones after The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is that you don't get the description and there is less like emotional involvement with the characters in a way. It's a lot more of a quicker read as well, and Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing does develop. Like since reading Daisy Jones and Evelyn Hugo, I've been going back over her previous works, like making my way through her backlog, because I do think that she's a very good writer. And to me, seeing how she's developed from her first books to Evelyn Hugo has been really fascinating and inspiring, because her older books are very different and they're not bad, but they're nowhere near the level that Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones are. But yeah, if you haven't read either of these, I would highly recommend reading Daisy Jones first and then Evelyn Hugo, because so many people rave about Evelyn Hugo and then read Daisy Jones and are disappointed. I mean, I loved both, but I would be interested to see in an alternate universe, if I had read Evelyn and Hugo first, what I would think of Daisy Jones, because I think that would be really interesting. But yeah, I adored them both, and it's made Taylor Jenkins Reid one of my auto-buy favourite authors, so exciting. Yeah, very, very emotional book, and yeah, very, very good. Amazing. The 5th and final book I want to talk about is one that I don't actually have yet. So I got an ARC of this book, and I just loved it. I mean, I loved the whole series, so that's really not a surprise. But this book is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. So I got an ARC of this through NetGalley, sent to my Kindle. I read it so quickly because I just needed to know what happened, and I just adored it. I always knew that I was going to get The Burning God to complete the trilogy, but then I got the Illumicrate archive of the Poppy War series, which I am so excited about because they're so pretty, and that should come around the end of November, beginning of December, which is incredibly exciting. So yeah, I am very excited for that. If you don't know, the Poppy War is a kind of, it's definitely an adult fantasy. Don't go into it thinking it's YA, because it's really not. There are brutal themes throughout the book, and it's set in the country of Nikan, which is inspired by China. So a lot of it is inspired by Chinese history, especially Chinese military history, and it's just so good. Like, I really cannot recommend it enough. R.F. Kuang is a brilliant writer, even if she's trying to destroy us all. But yeah, I would highly recommend that. Obviously I can't really speak too much to what The Burning God is about because it's not out yet, so it would be spoilers, and as well, if you haven't read books 1 and 2, it's very spoilerish, but they are fantastic books. There are a hell of a lot of trigger warnings though. You can quite easily Google them. The books are very graphic and quite depressing, but they are written so well. So yeah, I would highly recommend those, especially if you're like into kind of Chinese inspired like fantasy and Chinese like mythology aspects, because that all kind of combines and it's just so good. But yeah, I've also got a giveaway going on over on my Instagram, so if you follow me on Instagram and leave I think it's like a like and comment some people, then you're entered into the giveaway. So as always, the links to my socials will be in the description as well, so if you want to follow me on there on Twitter, that would be great. But yeah, that's kind of it. So yeah, those are, at least for now, the favourite books that I want to buy physically from books that I've read on the Kindle. I think that Kindles are a great way to get books, especially very cheap ones, like with the daily deals, the 99p's, and I think that it's a really good way to kind of get a book. The only problem is that when I really like a book, I'm like, no, I need the physical copy of it, I need to see it and I need to hold it. So yeah, I try not to do that unless I know that I will definitely reread them and that I want them because they're my favourite books. So fingers crossed. But yeah, those are the ones I want for the moment and the ones I've got. But yeah, I might do an updated version of this next year when I've probably found more that I'm gonna want physically, and then I will need a new bookshelf. But yeah, so that is it for today. If you haven't already, please subscribe and comment with any books that you loved on Kindle or audiobook that you had to buy physical copies of, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye guys.